I'm going to open this video by talking about tyre compounds, so please don't click away, it'll get more interesting, I promise. Kia ora, I'm Kimmy, I talk about Formula 1 in the world's second worst accent, and these are my 3 burning questions for the 2025 Belgian Grand Prix. So, tyre compounds then. Oh my god, I am so excited because something I have been banging on about for years is finally happening this weekend. Yes, that's right, Pirelli is skipping a step. Instead of bringing sequential compounds this weekend, the hard will be the C1, but the medium and softs will go one step further than usual with the C3 and the C4 rather than the C2 and the C3. Hopefully that makes sense. Clear as mud, right? Unfortunately, for this particular experiment, and not in general, to be clear, this is Spa and it is forecast to rain. So whether or not we actually get to see a Grand Prix play out in a way that gives everyone the chance to evaluate whether or not this idea works is a whole nother issue. But for now, I'm curious. Will this new tyre compound selection make for a more interesting weekend strategically? And I say weekend because in theory this could also be an interesting qualifying situation. It's 7 kilometres long, or 4.3 miles for those of you who don't do the metric system. Spa is the longest track on the calendar. Now, we've already been to one of the tracks that tips over the 6k mark, and that's Jeddah. However, conditions there are very different than what we get in Belgium with a consistent track surface. Spa, in contrast, was partially resurfaced in 2023, and if you remember last year, teams really struggled with understanding how to adapt to the constantly changing abrasiveness and the grip levels this caused. What ended up happening is that the resurfaced stretches did their job and generated more grip. However, this had a marked effect on graining and degradation, which made it tricky for drivers and teams to balance with the older sections of track and keep the tyres in the right window for fast laps. Now, last year, while the medium and softs were the same compounds as this year, the qualifying session was wet, so we didn't get to see what this particular challenge might have resulted in when dialed up to the max. This might be a weekend where if there's a dry quali, we see the mediums come out again for those cars who are struggling to manage their tyres. Then there's the Grand Prix itself. The hard compound is one step further than last year, and I'm sure unless you're a brand new fan, we all remember what happened when George Russell won with his outlier strategy of a one-stop. Russell was disqualified for having an underweight car by 1.5 kgs, which was in part attributed by the team to excessive tyre and plank wear. That loss of rubber across all 4 points of contact was a major factor in George's disqualification, and something that I'm sure many teams will be kind of considering when they're weighing up a one-stop versus a 2, even though the hard is the C1 this year rather than the C2. All that considered, this is soggy Spa, so whether or not we get to see all of this play out could go either way, but I'm excited for the potential nonetheless. And what if it does rain? Could this be another opportunity for Sauber to continue their upwards trajectory? Now, I'm not saying this is going to be a second podium in a row for Nico Hülkenberg. That would be silly. However, with the momentum the team has right now, and the only midfield car that's really mounting much of a consistent challenge being the Aston Martin of Fernando Alonso, provided the team continues with their focus on getting everything right, I think hoping for a second double points finish of the season isn't unrealistic. Gabriel Bortoletto's proven he's capable of banging out some really good qualifying laps. Hülkenberg's been incredible at making up places on Sundays, and they're in a good place overall as a team. Hülkenberg's podium at Silverstone was due to his strategy in the wet and Sauber's willingness to listen to their driver when they make a call from the cockpit. So if the rain does come down on Sunday, then utilising their learnings from that bonkers race to pick an alternative strategy that might net them big results is a bit of a given. Now, the fact that Sauber's success will likely come at the expense of Williams, for me personally, is a bit of a bummer, but that doesn't mean I don't want to see it. Sauber hasn't finished higher than 6th in the Constructors' Championship since back in the BMW days when they were racing under a German flag and before Peter Sauber bought the team back for $1. And sure, they're Audi in all but name at this point, but to see them finish 5th in their last year with the Sauber name attached would be pretty neat. And to do it with a guy in the twilight years of his career who was put out to pasture a few years ago and nobody could see a way back on the grid for him, and a talented rookie who had to suffer through being in one of the worst cars on the grid for a significant chunk of the season, that best of the rest result would just be even more satisfying. Now, before we get into the last point, I'm going to take a moment to remind you that if you enjoy my videos and would like to see more of them, then the best place to start is by clicking both the subscribe and the like buttons. It really helps me out with my channel's visibility as well, and it means you are more likely to see my new stuff pop up when I post it. If you're the kind of person who likes to support creators on Patreon, then the link is down in the description, as well as right here on the screen. And as always, a huge thanks to my patrons for helping me stay warm this winter. I'm sitting right in front of a heater if there's a hum in the background, if you're wondering. All right, what's the last question? What impact will we see from the Red Bull leadership changes, and how tiresome are the questions going to be from the media? Now, I get it. This is a huge news story. Christian Horner out after 20 years, Laurent Mekies stepping into the role with basically zero notice, but I'm sure a lot of the questions are going to be directed at Max and Yuki, and honestly, poor them. Maybe to a lesser extent Isaac and Liam, although I think Alan Permain's promotion will be very much playing second fiddle to Mekies' sidestep upwards, although I'm sure as a bare minimum, Liam will be getting more than a few queries about what happened at the start of the season. The media is going to be looking for one of them to drop a choice soundbite, but honestly, all I'm interested in is observing how they go about executing their race weekend, and if Laurent Mekies takes the Jonathan Wheatley approach and just kind of lets them do their thing before starting to exert his influence. Now, unlike Wheatley, Mekies has the added advantage of having worked parallel to the team he's been put in charge of. So he'll already have a bit of a head start in understanding how they operate. The key thing will be how much he can dig into the culture of the team and identify where the problem areas are, and if that's something he can change with any significant impact kind of quickly, or if it's a long game thing. Laurent Mekies seems like the kind of dude who does things slowly and with some kind of nuance rather than barging in like a bull in a china shop, and he's been quoted as saying his primary focus at the start will be meeting people, listening to their feedback, and understanding how the team functions. And he's had a couple of weeks to do that now, but if he's been given a timeline from the powers that be to make specific targeted improvements, then a slowly, softly approach might not be enough. I'm interested to see if much of his comments this weekend are around the team's performance targets for the second half of the season, or more focused on 2026. And if they have decided to work on a second half recovery, the approach to this will be fascinating, as we have kind of reached that point in the season now where teams are bringing the last of their upgrades for the regulation cycle, and to invest in large changes might cost more than potential prize money gains, especially if they're not successful. And yeah, I know people love to talk about how much cash Red Bull has as a whole, but a reminder that the Formula One team still needs to remain profitable and is its own subsidiary company. And at the moment, Max Verstappen is the one holding up the tent. When they do eventually lose him, because it will happen, it's not going to be just the talent that they'll have to replace, it's also his merch sales, and they already lost a lot of that when they dropped Checo. I love Yuki, but the reality is he just does not have the selling power of Red Bull cans that Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez have. And look, hey, realistically, a lot of the conclusions we as spectators will come to after this weekend are going to be mostly vibes based, with a bit of added flavour gleaned by reading between the lines. But I'm going to be paying close attention to the Red Bull garage and the pit wall every time the opportunity arises. So, what are you curious about this weekend? Do you think this could be Haas's time to shine? Do you think we could finally be in for a Lewis Hamilton podium? Or do you not really care about any of these storylines and are just focused on the fact that it's Spa? Chat about it in the comments. Thanks once again to my patrons, and I hope to see you here next time.